I wasn't going to do that. But we certainly want to support our own, particularly those who are minority business owners, and I think some of that will probably be touched on by the president of this great organization, which is a segue into us introducing him, even though he needs no introduction. It makes me proud to serve this organization with him and the things that he does. He is a tireless worker, always thinking. If you don't believe me, I just want to put a poll. How many have received text messages in about 3 to 1? That's because he's always thinking, but he has the heart of this community and the heart of this people. And I appreciate him for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the great president of this organization, let us receive him with what he deserves, which is a hand clap, Reverend Dr. Lionel Bush.
Thank you, Brother Vice President. I would say the check's in the mail if I had some money. Blessings to God, our Father, God, Holy Spirit. Each of you, our large children. I think that I am supposed to set the stage today as to why we are here. We thank every one of you for responding to my request for you to be here. Just a little housekeeping. Mary Kim Brainerd is out of the country, and we were going to try to do it by Zoom. We haven't been able to do that. And it's 10, I'm going to look at it. And so she said, I'm going to try to do it, but I don't want the scores and stuff in my house. So I got to stay with the and even if you're there, you have issues like this. So in about 8 minutes of call, whatever you're doing, you remember the call, because we want to do this here, as I said. In your city, Bishop, in Memphis, Tennessee, something happened that multiplied and became an inflection point in police community relations. There are 18,000 plus police departments in America, and nearly 900,000 officers, sworn officers, an untold number of wanted in America. And the historicity of policing in America as regards African Americans also does make us account of petty rolling and stop and frisk and being held in certain areas even before there were zip codes and being a controlled item in the America experience. The diaspora had not been too kind. But something happened January the 7th of this year in Memphis. A horrible incident happened. Happens all over the country. But this time, the cameras is on and the lights were bright. This time, that particular department did not obfuscate, did not gaslight us, but showed blow by blow, kick by kick, what happened. They didn't hide behind a merit board. They didn't hide behind procedures. They didn't hide behind protocol, which will make fools of all of us all. But they came out, and in 20 days, they brought those officers in. They fired them. They had aid with the prosecutorial staff. They charged them with second-degree murder. They came back and said, all of you all, Dr. Virginia King will be speaking to us later, all of you all who were supposed to be here, not only to protect and serve, but to heal us, you came out and for 18 minutes you said to let that man die. You fired too. I think that that is an inflection point. I worked on many of these cases since 1987 when Michael Taylor, 16-year-old boy, searched at least 6 or 7 times by 3 or 4 different cops taken from where he was to 25th Street and at the Juvenile Center, handcuffs, shot rang out, brains on the ground. We fought that Michael Taylor case. We fought the Leonard Barnett case. We fought the Brawl case. We fought many of the other cases. And all the time there was situations. In 96 when we fought the Brawl case, we had Rabbi Sasso and Sam Jones, Venerable Sam Jones, that was the head of that commission. They asked me to be the chairman of the composition commission. We did all of that work. They brought in the crumb of the crumb, the best Indianapolis had. They were all on the committees. And we did all of that work. And we got it to Roselle Boyd, the city county council person. They took it to the council. And so Star News came out and said to the FOP, well, they got a civilian review board. What do you think of it? And the response, they got a bulldog with no teeth. January the 6th, I think, changed that. I think the toothpaste is out of the tube. I think of the 18,000 units, if you get off the plane in Indianapolis, you got to face Avon, Brownburg, Claremont. You got to come and face IUPUI, Indianapolis Public School, Capital City. You got to face Zionsville, Carmel. You got to face all the way up to Lawrence and Cumberland and Southport. But I think of all of these agencies now, they have to look at January the 7th. They have to look at what Memphis did and say, there's a new paradigm. That's why you're here today. There is a new paradigm. I think it's a better paradigm. I think that it makes the phrase police-community relations, if you realness to that phrase, we got a chance to do something here. We need the police. After George Floyd, we heard people say, defund the police. That's a stupid idea. Reinvent the police department and reinvent our relationship that we have. We need to have a symbiotic relationship with the police department. And so we ask all of you to come and to be with us today. And I appreciate every one of you coming today. I tried to talk to 10:15, it's 10:14. I'm sure this man is getting ready to call, but whenever he calls, I got to interrupt y'all to put my friend, Mayor Joseph, Heaven Paul said on the line. So who do I give it to now for this next thing? All right, yeah. We have a response, by the way. Thank you for coming, Dan. Thank you for coming, Deputy Mayor. We have a response. We know that all politics is local and all policing is local. But in a sense, if we want to make transformational change, I heard on my way here, the President of the United States say he's going to talk about the balloon from China, but he's going to talk about policing and George Floyd tonight in the State of the Union. But our congressman talked to me. This is the mayor. Hello, Mr. Mayor. I'm fine, but you on the speaker, don't talk, don't tell us. So tell us about your water crisis, tell us about this stuff. How you going to handle this stuff with this? Say hi to everybody, Mr. Mayor. They can hear you.
Thank you, we're not meeting in person today. I woke up this morning with water in my basement, and I've got plumbers downstairs as we speak. Hopefully it won't overwhelm me, but it will prevent me from being present with you today. I did want to, and I appreciate Elder Rush allowing me to speak to you remotely. And I will be brief, but I want to participate in these important discussions about what occurred in Memphis and its implications on communities like ours here in Indianapolis. Most of you know, prior to the summer of 2020, the city of Indianapolis had engaged in a reworking of our system of criminal justice. We have outdated facilities. We have practices that needed to be targeted for major overhauls. Much of that work was already in progress when protests erupted in the wake of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. Both in Memphis and closer to home have strengthened the call for even more reform. And our city has worked to answer that. But we know building trust will be the work of years and maybe or urgently is an assurance of transparency and accountability in my judgment. General orders. Individuals who will ensure that the policies and the practices of local law enforcement meet the high expectations of our community. We have implemented training at the IPD Academy in implicit bias, and we have implemented a more comprehensive use of force policy, of which will be reviewed by our civilian majority use of force. We have instituted the first permanent police body cam program in our city. We're recruiting officers from throughout the region with both high pay and high expectations. And that includes recruitment events in Indianapolis' minority communities, such as a recent event at a Sikh temple on the far west side, with IMPD recruiting 4 officers of racial and ethnic minorities. And this year, we'll introduce a clinician-led task force to respond to nonviolent mental health crises.
Wait a minute, Mr. Mayor, I want them to clap on that, y'all. Y'all can clap on that. Yeah,
Well, Bishop, again, these measures are ongoing and ever evolving, but they are also critical to our overall violence reduction strategy. Because we all know that when police enjoy broad trust and credibility with those they are sworn to protect and serve, communities, all communities, are safer. And that is why IMPD and the city of Indianapolis are making the system that hold officers accountable more transparent, more efficient, and more widely understood by the community as a whole. So, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments. I know that you have a lot of speakers, so I don't want to overstay my welcome. And again, I want to formally apologize for not being there in person. My circumstances, unfortunately, are going to keep me here at home at least for the better part of the morning.
Our moderators are Tina Cosby and Roger Turner. Will y'all come up and ask the mayor a question before he get off the phone? And Brother Mayor, I know you're the mayor and you got a lot of you, but I know you went to seminary and you like to preach, so that was your second quote. You got one more quote.
Mr. Mayor, there have been a lot of calls since Memphis for the implementation of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. What are your thoughts on that?
Obviously, that is before Congress. I am supportive of the passage of the George Floyd Act, and certainly would be pleased and proud to implement that act at the local level. Having said that, my voice needs to be added to those who are seeking even more reform. I just wish I had the opportunity to vote on it. I'm not running for Congress. Don't get
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There, one question I've had, and I've related this bill to Russ a couple of times, but in Indianapolis, we're a major city, we've got a large population, we host a lot of important events, but Indianapolis still does not have a viable helicopter patrol that's in the skies that can respond to homicide scenes right away, that can light up an area where suspects might be, that can follow cars, particularly in police pursuits, that might prevent an injury through car accidents when police are using red lights and sirens and running pretty fast through the neighborhoods chasing cars. Are there any plans to get Indianapolis a modern helicopter patrol program?
Yeah, that's a very timely question. I've been having conversations with several law enforcement agencies in central Indiana. The helicopter that was used, I think we had one. It has been mothballed and is, I think, currently out of service altogether. We are having conversations about the use of helicopters in ways that you just suggested. Now, I'm not a helicopter expert, but I told a modern helicopter maybe $25 million in cost. And several people have suggested that if we were able to find money in the budget to bring a helicopter back on board, or perhaps two, that we ought to seriously consider that. I don't want to speak for the chief of police or IMPD and their budget, but rest assured, we want to use every available technology that not only helps our law enforcement community be transparent and accountable in law enforcement techniques, but also, we want to make sure that community members are included in those discussions, particularly as it relates to an item or items that are extremely costly. So, trying to balance costs associated with adding that kind of technology to whatever benefits they would also provide where they brought online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You are well represented here. I see one of your deputy mayors here. You got folks all over the room. We appreciate you, and we're going to move the program on and get them water pipe fixed, and we'll talk to you soon, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, Bishop. And let me just say, if there are any plumbers in the house today, feel free to stop by my house after your meeting.
Okay, then call out a cleric call out for the plumbers. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. All right. Bye. Before they just told me breakfast is ready, but I want to get some of these. Because moving further before we get to breakfast. And so I'm going to ask you all who are running the show, come up here and let's get our speakers. Each of these have a 3-minute opening statement. The mayor's a preacher, so he took longer. So y'all keep I'm going to introduce you. Yeah, listen. Our first speaker is Bishop David Hall. He was raised on Carrollton, went to Butler University, pledged the wrong fraternity. I don't know what's about it. Went to ITC in Atlanta, got his master's, got his doctorate up in Chicago, came back, and he pastored. I'm a member of the Church of God in Christ, church born out of the Gin House. Bishop Charles Harrison Mason, the largest black African-American Pentecostal church in the world. He pastors the home church, and now he is on the general board of a 5 million member denomination. He's one of the 12 people on that general board. Let's welcome Bishop David Hall. Just clap your hands. After Bishop David Hall, you heard from the Mayor, Mayor Brainerd. He had representation here. Mayor Brainerd and I became friends some years ago, and we continue to talk. And when we were at the Columbia Club, my sons right here, Mayor Brennan spoke and I spoke, and we decided to reconnect. And we want to deal with the ideal of how we police and how we govern across this place. So that's why Mayor Brainerd agreed to this. But he's out of the country now. He'll come back and he'll talk to us. We have his police chief and we have others here. We have U.S. Attorney Zachary Myers here in the Southern District. We're just so proud of the fact that somebody that looked like us is at such a pivotal place in the United States government. Often that gives us solace. We think it's going to be justice, but we think it's going to be fair and impartial. So we have him. We also have Prosecutor Ryan Liz, who just won his race. Stand up there, brother. I wouldn't say basketball now. He still think he got a jump shot. Go ahead.
We'll see about that.
We have also our sheriff here. Speaking of transparency, something happened in the jail. Inmate rolled up over, died. The sheriff called and said, I want to be up front. This is what happened. We got cameras. And I'm always a little jaded with police stuff, but he don't know how that really connected me. We don't have to go try to play hide and go seek with these people. So pop your hand for our sheriff. The police chief from Carmel, Indiana, Jim Barlow, and we appreciate you for coming, and you're welcome here. Now, we did not try to get all these police chiefs. We've been here all day, but we wanted a better. We have our own police chief here, and we're so glad for our own police chief, Chief Randall. Pop your hand. We got the sagacious, the erudite, the power thinker. He got so many PhDs and D's and all the other D's and stuff like that. Oh, Lord, he went to more house than anybody else house. I don't know about it. But he's a criminologist. He owns his own business. He's concerned about issues. He called me the other day on the issue of the young lady at the library that they were trying to throw away. We don't have to throw away people. And we certainly don't get in those fights, and we appreciate Brother Marshawn. Pop your hand for him.
Elder said we're in charge. I should have introduced you because Elder kind of tells his personal experiences, and he's got so many. Elder and I have been working together, actually, when I was on the police department. We started working together, I think it was in the 70s or early 80s. And we've been working that long. That's how dedicated this man has been in this community. I'm very glad to have met him and worked with him. But we're going to announce the speakers, but if you have questions, write your questions down. You'll have a question and answer after all the speakers have presented their speeches, all right?
Okay. Elder said you're going to eat first. So I'm not sure how everyone is going to be dismissed in terms of going to the table. And certainly after that. And when we come back, we will start with the questions. Again, as Chief Turner said, if you have questions that you want us to ask the panelists, please, if you have a few minutes, mark it down, and a volunteer will bring those questions up here, and we'll get to as many of those as possible. So please, right now, go ahead and get your breakfast, and we'll start. Yeah, if you can do that as quickly as possible, so that we can get on with the program, that would be very much appreciated.
How's it going?
Could I have everybody's attention? Shh. Could I have everybody's attention? What we're going to do is after the head tables have gone, we're going to rotate from right to left, that way back. Everybody understand? Y'all sure? All right.
Lord is blessed.
Take me out, try to bring me back in.
baby and my family. That's awesome. Well, it's good to see you. Yes, ma'am. Y'all wanna?
And around the city, but like I said, what I have to say is a little bit more extensive. We really sat down and really listened to. Yes, sir. Because growing up in Philly in the early 1969 to 1977, and if you look at the rate of crime and black crime in the community, you'll understand that there's something that I would have to say. So, what helps to incubate crime?
In your professional opinion as a pastor here in the city of Indianapolis, on the west side, is there a disconnect with the police, community involvement? Is there a systemic problem?
Yeah, it's a great disconnect between them. You can never connect with the police with the community until the community have a connection with itself.
Yes, sir.
So if our community leaders and our Christian faith-based leaders are not connecting with the community, you know, they're talking about movement. Everything is in active mode, but nothing is proactive.
So
there's no encountering these young people and meeting them where they're at.
Yes, sir.
And having conversations with them, walking up to the stores and stuff that they're hanging out on, and just having some dialogue. Like I said, but I have to say it's a little bit more extensive based on data and my experience living in Philadelphia.
Yes,
in those early years of the 70s and the 1970s, when the crime escalated to a tremendous level. And then it picked back up in the 80s after seeing a downturn. And then cities across the country picked up because of the crack cocaine situation.
So did the pandemic have an effect on the problems that we're facing today?
No, problems were already there. I mean, they were already surviving in survival mode already to their now, to the best of their ability that they were doing. So the pandemic didn't escalate none of that. This was already embedded.
As quick as the Memphis Police Department turned around in 20 days, the incident that happened on January 7th, that was a pretty quick turnaround. And so how do you feel that
Well, I feel like, again, that was great that they did what they did. It was good. But again, we haven't seen that kind of turnaround when there are white officers involved in these type of shootings, in these type of incidents. So that turned around very quick. But to understand all of the assailants and all the people in it were black. So, I mean, hey, kudos. You know what I mean? Kudos. Hey, hey, all right. We haven't seen nothing such as that situation like that. Everything on the halt, everything has to be under review and investigation. They lose and with evidence right there. So I mean, that's nothing that can move me, because again, that's another signal showing that hey, black injustice will be dealt with different than white injustice.
We appreciate your professionalism as far as the pastor being here in the city of Minneapolis on the west side. Pastor Jeffrey Thomas, God bless you.
Bless you. Thank you, sir, for happening.
Pastor Phillips,
Yeah.
God bless you, Pastor. Lester, we want to interview you and ask some questions in regards to the situations that are going on in Memphis, Tennessee, and how we're still getting the turnaround, the 20-day turnaround for those 5 police officers there in the city of Memphis. How can we here in Indianapolis help with that situation that happened in Memphis here in Indianapolis? Is there, what is your take on it as a pastor here in the city of Indianapolis?
Thank you, sir. One thing is, for the last 8 years, I served as pastor in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
So just getting here to Indianapolis and having a chance to actually go back to Memphis right before the funeral. One thing, as Attorney Ben Crump said, that we can learn from it is that this could be a blueprint. So whenever we see police brutality, it doesn't take a long process if we really see it. Although I do have my own thinking about that because there were 5 African-American police officers. I believe that's why they're just so swiftly. Yeah, it was done so swiftly. But I think one thing we can learn about from here in Indianapolis is that
That's amazing.
the good cops got to stand up. Somebody, my prayer was that somebody would at least say, okay, this is enough. And hopefully what we can learn here in Indianapolis is that good cops have to stand up against bad cops.
Yes, sir. Is this a community problem? Is this a neighborhood problem? Is it a city problem? How do we approach it? How do we approach it? How do we fix it? Is there a disconnect? Is there
I think it's systematic. It's in the fiber of America, especially in our community, black community, this self-hatred. So it really doesn't matter who the police is, we're the victim of it. So whether it's the black police or white police or Asian or Hispanic police officer, we as black Americans still suffer disproportionately from the abuse that Any questions, any concerns you have with the department? So, thank you.
Next up will be Marshawn Wally. He's the founder and CEO of Myconics Management, Inc., and a whole lot of other caps that I can't get to right now, but Marshawn Wally.
Thank you, Tina. So Elder Rush asked me to be a criminologist today. I'm actually an economist, but Catholics sometimes get confused when they're around that. But nonetheless, I am optimistic about our community. We have been in the midst of reform for quite some time, going back even to Michael Taylor. That is a long time to be in the midst of reform and to be in the struggle for trying to make this city a better place for everyone to live, work, and play. I believe that today we'll have an opportunity to talk about the next level of where we're going with reform. I do believe that Memphis is a model, but we have the opportunity to continue to perfect our model. So I'll have some ideas on that, and I hope to share that with you today.
Thank you, Marshawn. Next up is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana, Zach Myers.
Morning, everybody. I'm Zachary Myers. I've had the privilege to be your U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana since November of 2021, and I'm a proud member of the Department of Justice. We have been committed to civil rights as an organization from our very inception, and one of the most important things that we're here to do in the community is to promote public safety. But there's no way for us as federal law enforcement, federal prosecutors to do that if we do not have the trust and support of the community, and if we don't hold police accountable as well as the public accountable, whenever laws are broken, then we have to trust you, the law enforcement department. We have to show that we hold ourselves accountable well when things go wrong. And that's why civil rights prosecution is a very important part of our portfolio. as federal prosecutor, especially when we have some egregious abuse of justice we take seriously, and people who commit acts of violence against law enforcement, unlawful acts of violence by law enforcement have to also be taken seriously. Work with entities, not court, work with our state, local, and federal departments, both law enforcement and the community. And I think Dr. Rush and I am for inviting me to today. I'm happy to answer questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, everybody. They point to everything at the federal level. It seems like y'all can't get nobody trade. I see the same thing. I hear a lot of black folks say, if black folks had stormed the Capitol, or if black folks had done this, that, and the other thing, the government would be right on this. So how do you connect what you are at the federal level called justice with our experience on Illinois Street?
And Dr. Rush, I understand and really appreciate that question. I'll tell you that the federal law enforcement plays a unique role as opposed to state because they're so much smaller. Because I'm not going to sit here and talk about federal criminal procedure statutes and all that. But what I will talk about is what I hope is our demonstrated commitment to when these wrongs happen, we do something about it. If you look at some of the horrific incidents that have happened, the murder of Walter Scott, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of George Floyd, and each of those cases, yes, it's never as swift as it should be, as we'd like it to be, because of the things we have to do federally to ensure that we don't just bring charges, but that the charges stick successfully beyond a reasonable doubt in front of the jury for the narrow federal statutes that we do bring in these cases. But if you look at each of those instances, the people who murdered Ahmaud Arbery, they were subject to federal prosecution and got life or lengthy sentences in federal court. The officer who directly murdered and the officers who were on the scene and did not intervene for the death of George Floyd, federal prosecution. There are currently federal charges pending against officers who allegedly made false statements to get the warrant to get into Breonna Taylor's home, as well as officers who fired their weapons on the scene. There was a successful federal prosecution in South Carolina of the officer who murdered Walter Scott. So on the federal side, and it has been announced that the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, working in part with my colleague in the Western District of Tennessee, has opened its investigation and are working with the FBI to address, on the federal side, the incident in Memphis last month. And so what I'll say is that we're not always in a position to respond immediately federally because of the system we work in, but in terms of responding in a public way, but we work urgently on these matters as soon as they come up. And we try to navigate the system as quickly as we can, but to make sure that we're getting charges that stick and convictions that hold up, and that ultimately people are being held accountable. Now, the state system is built in different ways and has different rules, and one of the reasons that it's so great for us to partner with our state colleagues is because they're frequently able to make arrests faster than us and bring charges faster than us, while we have to run through some of the federal processes. So that interlinking, as you see the immediate arrests on the state side in Memphis and the ongoing federal investigation that's coming, that being able to fill that gap because the feds are sometimes slower than we'd like to be, I think is really important, and it's just another reason why we have to partner with folks at the state and local level.
Zachary Myers, thank you so much. It's important to have someone of his stature to be here to explain that, because so many of us do not understand. Ryan Mears, Marion County Prosecutor, up next.
All right. My name is Ryan Mears.
Hey, how you doing?
Up next, Marion County Sheriff Kerry Dorsey.
Put cameras up, I think, no talking to live, for instance, in the daylight, may not have happened in the working night. So I like to think that these counselors and mayors let us think about how we may step in there. It doesn't have to be the police, you know, there are a lot of things that don't take police laws. We do have new creation, that's called the emergency services communication, field dispatch. Many agencies put behind the side. Folks in faith, the opportunity to say the same. Thanks for having
Last but not least, we have Bishop David Paul. And Bishop Paul, before you, I guess I'd like to ask, what is the situation in Memphis? How are you? How's your city? Okay.
We are progressing in Memphis, and I want to thank Dr. Rush and Bishop Harrison for the invitation. Mr. Godfrey, Wolf said, "Can you come back home?" I'm back home, and so it's good to be here and have an experience of what happened in Memphis, Tennessee. The tragedy, it seems to be an opportunity, and Memphis, with its mayor, Jim Strickland, and its police chief, trying everything that they can to make something creative out of their imagination, rebounding from the suffering and from the abuse, and make something happen that will hopefully sustain to the entire country. That paradigm shift is on. And so Memphis is doing, we're trying. And that's why I've been invited, I think, just to shed a little light. As I said to Dr. Rush, my backbone friend, I've been in touch with DOJ, I met with them, and with the West Tennessee U.S. Attorney, and I met with them, and with the clergy group. And what I said was basically that the ethics of society needs to be sharp, the focus. Ethics is predicated upon one's activity. As a result of one's activity, you get to judge the action. Thank you so much. Now, every time this case, when that city officials, police authorities, clergy, business persons of all types come together and say that we want to solve a problem that is pervasive across this country. The violent and untimely death of innocent people at the hands of the police. But the perspective must be clear, because without the police, our society would be in our support. So my comments to the city of Memphis and to those with whom I'm engaged has been that we need to approach the situation from an ethical standpoint, that we need to give a result that is filled with integrity and purpose, that we need to create the structures so that people who see these things occur will know to whom to talk, how to deflect, and how to press for change. And if we do that, we will create, I hope, a new spirit in our community. I don't want to be fatalistic, but America is lacking a spirit of cohesive community. It is lacking a spirit of unity. And we all, and I'm impressed with this. I'm really impressed with this. Officials, legal, law enforcement, elected officials, and clergy. It would seem to me that there would not be, if this happens everywhere, that needed buffer zone that always occurs after an incident. Somebody comes in, tries to make sense of it, puts a story out, and then people run with it. But the pain, the hardship, it's yet there, an undercurrent. But if we approach this together and with a sense of ethics, I believe we can solve some critical issues. And I'll stop right there. And you're a Cosby. You have a brother named Bob? No. Well, I know Bob.
You know Bob?
Yeah.
Well, I'll look him up.
Look him up.
Okay.
Or in Minneapolis and raised on school.
Oh, okay. Oh, I can read it.
The reason why Bishop Hall is here, one of the reasons why he's here, the last speech that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made not at Masonic Hall, but Mason Temple Church of God in Christ, over which this man is General Board, one of the General Board members. The other day in the press conference when Reverend L. did the press conference, he did it once again at Mason Temple Church of God in Christ. Brother Jabu, I think he was there. And so there is a connectedness to the work he's doing in Memphis with this effort, and that is an added benefit of having you, Bishop. Thank you for coming.
We are going to take your questions, and I think it'll be a lot more,
Elder's got to give me instructions again. But we're going to ask Councilman King O'Connell to come forward at this time before the questions. And he's going to read the letter from Congress. I'll be first.
and then I will be out to just take your, I'll just put the microphone. If you have a question, raise your hand. Not write it down. I think that'll speed things up. Just raise your hand, I'll look for you, and I'll let you address the panel.
Thank you very much. Check, 1, 2, 3. We got it. From Congress, Andre Garza. To have the rights and the interdenomination of ministerial honors in Annapolis. Thank you for holding this important community conversation. While I'm currently in Washington and not able to join you in person, I want to thank everyone present for participating in this conversation. In 2021, I had the honor of presiding over the House when we passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which would have banned chokehold and no-knock warrants, create greater accountability measures for police, and improve transparency. Unfortunately, this bill did not pass out of the Senate. But I will continue to advocate for this important bill to become law. In fact, I just co-sponsored a new bill by Representative Omar to end the no-knock warrant. Police misconduct are unwarranted violence, particularly against black people. has a long history. We know that George Floyd's murder was not the first incident. The litany is long and painful. Rodney King, Abner Louima, Amadou Diallo, Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Jamir Rice, Michael Brown, and now Tyree Nichols, beat to death by 5 black officers. Something is fundamentally wrong with the policing and how police is handling, while the public consciousness of this issue has improved over the years. We still have much work to do. That's why I'm working on a new bill to establish stronger training standards for every police academy in the country. All officers need to learn what I learned as a young officer. Lethal force should always be the last resort, and de-escalation training will save lives of our community members and officers too. Locally, my heart is still broken over the death of Herman Whitfield. When his parents called for help for their son, they did not expect him to die in the hands of the officers who responded to their 911 call.
Absolutely.
That's why I call on the Department of Justice to investigate the death of Herman in Indianapolis and determine if the civil rights were violated. It's also why I will continue to advocate for common sense, police reform, and greater accountability measures. But everyone must come together to improve the safety of our community. Today, community conversation is more important than ever. The faith community has always been the heart of the work to mobilize, organize, and shape real lasting change. Together, we can end the senseless murders of Black Americans and bring justice to the many lives in this epidemic. Sincerely, Andre Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Conley.
That deserve a hand clap, y'all.
This time, I'm going to take questions. This is a very controversial subject. The death of anyone is certainly going to be controversial, delicate. In this case, there were 5 black police officers and the person who died was a black person, and normally, if these were 5 white officers.
Can't hear you, Chief.
Better mics are covered. If these were 5 white officers, immediately the thought would be this is a racial incident motivated by race. Race is not always the motivator for an incident of business conduct. Most of the time, I found most of these incidents are motivated by 2 things: improper training or failure of the officers to adhere to the training. For example, in this case, the George Floyd incident demonstrated the need, certainly the jeopardy officers have when they don't respond to stop an officer that's out of line with his district, or render assistance to a citizen that's hurt. But it happened again in America. When I was directing training for the Indianapolis Police Department, every major incident in the nation is like this. We designed a training program for to make sure our officers understood it, to make sure it didn't happen. We certainly supervise the supervisors to tell them to be there. There would have been a lot different result here if the supervisor had been on the scene. But it was not. I think it would have been a lot different result if there had been proper training and certain proper supervision. Martin Luther King was mentioned before, but one thing he said was, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. One thing about justice, it doesn't have a color. It doesn't matter. Injustice, whether you're black or white, if it's injustice, it should be treated like any other criminal. It's very important for the police department to understand that when a law enforcement officer breaks the law, he's now a law violator. He's a defendant. He's not a police officer. When he steps out of line, protecting you and enforcing law, who's no longer in the station. And they should be treated like any other person breaking the law. So from that, please see Ms. Cosby, and present your questions, and designate a panel member to respond.
Chief, I have the first question, and it is, how is it possible for police to be fired from one department and be allowed to work at another? And if someone wants to take that, please raise your hand. That'll be IPD Chief, and we'll take it.
Yes. So, in Indiana, the law enforcement academy has the ability to suspend a license of a police officer, actually revoke it. So when we have officers, let's say from IMPD, that are truly fired, that information goes to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, and those licenses are revoked, so they cannot practice being a police officer. At least in the state of Indiana, and that's probably recognized by other states as well.
Chief,
I
was going to ask, one of the provisions of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is, or would be, the establishment of a national registry where police officers who may have a problem with one department would be flagged automatically before going through. Did you want to respond to that, Rashawn?
Well, what I would add, yes, it is a provision of the George Floyd Act. One of the other categories is being involved in the public policy process. The reform that the chief just mentioned was a relatively recent reform that happened because people like you showed up at the General Assembly and advocated. And so more recently they come up with this solution because the community showed up. So that is the one moment, the one thing I wanted to add with respect to the George Floyd Act. As the Congressman noted in his letter, that got through Congress, that got through the House, and didn't get through the Senate. And so we're dealing with the issue, for example, of chokeholds right now. When we got the reform through this last time, I want to say it's 2020, 2021, chokeholds was included in that legislation. And so that is an active fight that we are still dealing with. It has been moved more to an administrative level where we think this is a space where the community needs to partner with law enforcement to advocate for the reforms that we tried to fight for when we got our use of force policy, when we got our general orders for. Right now, the issue that is before ILEA is changing some of the standards that we fought for in Marion County and potentially removing them, particularly as it pertains to proportionality in the way we use force. And so we need to be aware of that, we need to be alert on that, we need to continue to have these conversations, particularly about the George Floyd Act, but also things that are happening right here. Just because we got the reform doesn't mean that we get to keep the reform. You only get to keep what you can hold on to.
And I want to follow up with that, either Sheriff Forstall or Prosecutor Mears. What does that, what Marshawn just described, how does that impact or affect what you do in terms of latitude? What you choose to do, what you choose not to do? Tell you what, let's switch.
There we go. Actually, I think that the passage has assisted law enforcement. One of the things we had problems with before, I'm not saying every agency, but was if you fired someone and another agency wanted to hire them somewhere else and they inquired, about all you could say was, we wouldn't hire them back. And that fear was that if we said more than that, we would be sued as an agency. And I think the passage of this law protects law enforcement as well as the public to be able to say, no, we're going to tell you what they did, and this is why you shouldn't have them anywhere else be a law enforcement officer. So I would support what occurred in this passage.
I think to follow up on Marshawn's comments, I think one of the concerns that I have, like in particular as it relates to the issue of chokeholds, is we have the Indiana legislature kind of imposing standards on every community in terms of what's acceptable or what's not. I think the people of Marion County made it very clear that they don't think chokehold is an acceptable way to resolve physical confrontations. And now the Indiana legislature is coming in and trying to standardize that or make that in no way to train law enforcement officers. And so I think that's the concern that I have, is that then as a prosecutor, we have to demonstrate how that training is unreasonable in order to move forward with the criminal prosecution. And so the cynic in me tells me that maybe some folks in the legislature wanted to include that language so it would be more difficult to potentially prosecute officers in use of force situations. But Marshawn's a public policy expert, so I'll defer to him.
Yeah.
We need to stop them from choking us. That's my position.
Bottom line, yeah, indeed. Chief, we have another question from our audience, and this is a question, this is a question. Why do traffic stops or suspicion of criminal activity result in the death of the black man? No other race or nationality is being killed in the streets by police across the nation.
Well, Chief, he's answering that question. We had it also, and y'all got it right there. The guy from Idaho killed them people, stabbed them. Him and his daddy rode through here on 70. Stopped twice in 9 minutes. I saw that tape. They were impatient with the police and said, why did you stop us? We white. Went all the way to Pennsylvania. Black folk get killed with a tail light and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. If we're talking about the man that was accused of the murders in Idaho, sometimes those communications across state lines are not what we would hope. You know, we come across people left and right, and doesn't mean that we're naturally going to know that they're wanted on suspicion of some other crime. So that's why I imagine he was able to get to Indiana and stop twice without an issue. As for black murderers being stopped and ultimately killed, obviously we know things happen. I don't have a response to that, except, you know, obviously we don't like to see that either. But without going through each individual scenario as to what happened and why, I can't really possibly answer that.
So Chief Barlow, how does that work? If you have a national manhunt underway, do all police departments everywhere across the nation, or does it just go to certain ones? And is that covered every morning at, I don't know, or afternoon or whatever at Rope? How does that work? That some police departments may be aware and others may not be aware of a national manhunt?
And I think in this case, and I was involved, from what I read, is that there was for this person at the time, so that would naturally, once there is active warrants for somebody, it goes into our Indiana-based system and a national-based NCIC. Yeah. So that all officers should be able to find information. But I don't think in this case, this wasn't widely known that this was the suspect.
Process and procedure. We also, go ahead, Chief. We have another panelist who's just joined us.
Yes, excuse me, please. Dr. Virginia Kane, who's the Marion County Health Director, is here, and she didn't get that opportunity, Madam Moderator, to give her 3 minutes, and so...
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Is it two?
Two, Dr. Kane.
Come on, everybody. Let's welcome Dr. Kane.
Hey, I want y'all to watch out. This is one of my heroes in the marathon.
Yes, so she's telling me 2 minutes so I can have 5. Thank you.
Okay, Dr.
Wait a minute, Dr. Kane. I got to listen. When black infant mortality rate was high, who you gonna call? We didn't call Ghostbusters. We called Dr. Virginia Kane. She's one of our heroes. Y'all put y'all's hands together and let her
I just have to really compliment the city of Indianapolis and all the residents. You guys just did an incredible job for us doing that community outreach education and taking care of your friends and colleagues and your family members. So we did so wonderful because of all of you, and just want to thank you so much related to this. And especially under the work that our healthcare professionals have done. I'm going to come from this just from a healthcare standpoint because of the individual that was, as you know, he was traumatized and he was, I believe, handcuffed. And so the question comes, what should be the natural, what's the length of average time should we expect if we call them, we want the ambulance to respond. Varies from different metropolitan cities, but they like to try to say, can you respond around in about 9 or 10 minutes? Once you get that 911 call, someone has to come provide that emergency services. Now, once you are there, and if there are 2 or more emergency management healthcare professionals there, and you see someone on the ground, so one person immediately should be doing a physical examination and assessment to see what that status is of that patient. Because you know they may not be breathing, or they may have some other issues that they have to quickly provide some assistance. While the other healthcare professional, that's their job to try to get the history. So was this person experiencing chest pain that may make a difference? You know, are they wheezing, you know, and maybe some inhaler from asthma or things of that nature. But immediately, when you come across a person from an emergency room response, you're supposed to immediately have someone do the examination to know that there's no quick intervention I need to do now while stabilizing the person. And then my understanding also that this person had a stun gun utilized in order to incapacitate them. Now, these stun guns are not always benign, and so how many times should someone use a stun gun on an individual? Now, I don't know all the literature related to that, but we know that deaths have occurred from using a stun gun even after 1 time or 2 times for an individual. And you're at greater risk if you have a heart condition. And you have to look at, especially if we're looking at the Black community, we have some of the highest heart conditions compared to any other racial and ethnic group. So we're even at a higher risk when someone is using a stun gun. But the other thing you want to think about, how many of you are football players out here? Who saw that national champion? Who saw that Buffalo Bills player that got? So we have what we call a cardiac cycle that tells us when we pump our heart at certain times. So you might, if you're hit by a stun gun during a particular part of that cardiac cycle, you know, it could render you unconscious or really at high risk. So what am I saying here? I think we got to make sure that when people are utilizing some of these tools, you need to be trained. And how much training should you have before you're allowed to do certain tools? And what is that standard? And so, and also, you don't want somebody that, I know you were talking about the choke collar or whatever. So if someone doesn't do it on a frequent basis, you know, I may not have done that or had a demonstration of it like 2 or 3 years, what's their memory to know how to do it appropriately? So I think that we should be thinking about the standards that should be in place, and if we can't meet those standards, then maybe we shouldn't continue certain activities as a result of that. 2 minutes are gone.
All right. This next card has 2 questions, and this is another question that we often hear, especially in forums like this with police officers, police officials. And the question number 1 is, why do police shoot to kill over shoot to disarm?
I think that if you look nationally, former firearms instructor, is that we're not like the Westerns. We're not that good, I would say. We train, but we really train to shoot center mass. And I'm not that good at center mass, and I don't think it's not realistic under stress to expect anybody to be able to shoot a gun out of a hand or shoot someone in the knee intentionally. And I think it goes into training we do a lot of training, yet I don't think that that's kind of really a reasonable expectation under a stressful situation.
Anybody else wanted to add to that? Chief Tate?
Yeah, I don't know that there's much more to add, except that, you know, the real question is, do we have the right to shoot? And if you do have the right to shoot, then some type of deadly force is probably being used against you. And that's where we go back to shooting in the center mass. If you have the right to shoot someone, then you have the right to kill them. And that's what they're going for. Not that they necessarily want them to die, but those center masses are really where they have to concentrate, because as Chief Barlow said, it's not like the movies where you can, under those kind of situations, you're necessarily going to be able to hit someone in the arm or the leg or shoot a weapon out of somebody.
The second half of that question, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why don't you use the taser at center mass? You don't use the taser in most cases.
Tasers are used, but if someone is...
No, that's not what I said, Chief. I said, why don't you use the taser at center mass? You use the firearm at center mass. But when we see tasers, most tasers are in the middle section or in the back or in those areas. That's my question.
Sure, well, I would disagree. It is used in center mass most of the time. And the other portion of that is if someone has a gun and they're willing to shoot that officer, taser may or may not work. And the goal is not for the officer to have to wait and see if they're going to be shot and killed. A gun versus a gun is more of what you would look for as opposed to a taser versus a gun.
Yeah, go ahead, Sheriff. Is it on? Yeah, you can just leave it on. Thank you, Brother John.
Okay, there we go. I just wanted to clarify, and I'm not going to speak for the other chiefs, but I think I will, but we don't really train people to shoot to kill. I mean, when we're talking at center mass, we're talking paper targets or metal targets, basically in this area with a thing that's standing still. So when that shot is fired, it's to stop. Nobody's saying we plan to kill anybody when that shot is. We want to stop that threat. We also have to be aware of what's behind it. So if you're shooting at someone and you're trying to, if you set the gun out of their hand, first off, the chief of Carmel said, we're not that good to be able to do that. And secondly, you have to think of where that round goes down range. So you're trying to shoot my hand here, you got to know what's behind you too. So I think that's what the officer's saying is we don't want it to go anywhere, but we'll replace it, and it's the largest place, center mass, and hopefully just until the threat stops.
Yeah, indeed. Bishop.
I want to say that shooting to wound as opposed to shooting to kill is a misnomer. Now, what the public wants to know is why is it that when in the case of Amadou Diallo, shot more than 40 times, in the case of Anquan Bolden in Chicago, shot 11 times,